everyone, and welcome to the Quickscreen Show. I'm your host, Nate Albaugh, aka Quickscreen, when you're talking to me on the forums. And today we're going to talk about coaching football. It's been a good week. I've been wrapped up a lot in wrestling. I'm anxious to get wrestling over with. I like wrestling, but football's my love, obviously. And once I start getting deeper and deeper into the wrestling season, and I almost start to get the feeling of, whoa, I need to be getting ready for my summer with football. I just start getting a little anxious to get it over with, and I start seeing that some guys are out at clinics. I get a little jealous. I'm anxious to get out into the clinic season, so hopefully we can wrap wrestling up with a bang. Hopefully we have a good finish with my team, and then I can get really thinking about football again, which obviously I love to do. Today we're going to talk about the 5 mistakes offensive coordinators make. And really I shouldn't say the 5 mistakes. I should say 5 mistakes. Because there are probably lots of mistakes offensive coordinators make. I know these mistakes well because I've made them all. And I probably still make all these mistakes. I by no means am immune from these mistakes. And I've learned over 5 years of calling offense, I've learned a lot. And I know I've gotten better over the course of 5 years. So one of the hardest things to get used to when I first started calling plays was just the speed that it all went. You know, you really have just a couple seconds to make that decision. And there are times during a game where that decision can be quick and can be easy. But the hardest part is getting used to those moments where you have that moment of uncertainty. Which play should I call? And it's a huge situation. You have to make the right call, and you still just have those 10 seconds to make it. It's getting used to those moments of high intensity and a lot of questions, and even people chirping in your ear over the headsets, and you still have to make that decision, and it takes some getting used to, and I think I'm still getting used to it. Every game that goes by, I look back, and I kind of nod my head or shake my head at the mistakes that I made, or maybe even kick myself if they're big mistakes, because I surely still make them. But let's go ahead and dive into 5 mistakes offensive coordinators make. One mistake offensive coordinators make very often is they don't take the time to truly study the opponent's defense. Week to week, I think it's important to take time to really look at what your opponent is doing. Not just answering the question, do they run a 4-4 or do they run a 4-3? I think a lot of offensive coordinators kind of stop there. And I know that a lot of offensive coordinators stop there because I used to stop there. I'm learning all these mistakes because they're mistakes that I've made. And I hear coaches talk about from time to time what they do or don't watch for their opponents. I do think that there is a lot to be said that you can only plan so much for opponent's defense, but I think there's a few key components a lot of offensive coordinators are missing. I alluded to it earlier in a Quickscreen Show where I think it's important to look at the opponent's keys. What is their linebacker keying? Because you can use that against them. What is their defensive back? What is their free safety keying? You need to know what his key is because you can use that against him. So I think it's important to watch their defense. Another thing we look for is who is the most kickable. We call him the possum. We're looking for a team's possum. Who is he? Where is that kid that we can make look silly? Probably for us really with our trap play. And we've got different ways to trap. You got your basic trap, but we've got other plays we're looking to kick guys out on. We've got to find who's their possum. Who's their stud? Who do you need to be aware of where he is so that you can run away from him? Can you predict where he'll be? If you get a tight end to this side, is he always away from tight end? If so, then you can plan accordingly with your game plan. You need to attack away from him if he's that big of a stud. Who's the fish? Is there a kid on the field that is clearly worse than the others? Find him and attack him. It is quite common for offensive coordinators to not really take the time to find these guys and attack them because they kind of get in a routine of just doing what you do. And it's especially common if you're kind of loaded on talent and you're sitting 4-0. That's the easiest time to make that mistake. You're 4-0, you've been crushing people, you're scoring 50 points a game, and now all of a sudden you play someone good and you just assume that you're going to score your 50. It's important to always study no matter how good or how bad you're doing. Study, study, study. Find the weaknesses. What can you use against them? Mistake number 2 that offensive coordinators make is that they get away from their core, the core of their offense, they get away from it too quickly. Now, this is a very important one to keep in mind, and you have to really, it's a battle with yourself within the game. You know, for us, we're the wing T, so our core is a trap and the buck sweep. It is easy if we come out in the first quarter and you stuff the trap on me, or you stuff our buck sweep, or something goes wrong, it is easy for us to get away from that. We obviously have a lot of different pieces to the puzzle. We've got a lot of different parts to our offense. So it's easy for us to get away from them and forget about the buck sweep, forget about the trap. But it's key for my offensive coordinator, or my offensive guys in the booth, to remind me, Coach, don't forget about the buck sweep. Don't forget about your trap. It's important for us to run these because every other piece of our puzzle comes from that core, you know, so every play action fake comes off of that. How well can your play action fake work? How effective can it be if you don't run the actual buck sweep? You know, so there's so much of what we do that comes off of that core. We have to run it. We have to run it in the third quarter, in the fourth quarter, to be sure that the rest of our offense is effective. Number 3 mistake is that they leave a key component of a system out. For example, if you're a wing T team and you're not running the counter, you know, you're not running a wingback counter, or an I formation team who is really a power scheme type team and they're not running the power, or an option team, an I formation team that's option, and they never truly run the option out to the third level. They're not taking it out to a triple option scheme, or a triple option team that's not running the midline. So I think that that's very common. You'll see a team, and you can watch it in your opponents that you scout. Every team, or they should have, a core of what they do. This is what we do. We are wing T. We are a I formation option. We are triple option. But they're leaving a very key component out. Now, it kind of happens gradually. You're an offensive coordinator, and maybe 1 year or 1 week, you don't have the right kid to really make midline work. Maybe you don't have that stud quarterback. You don't have a stud fullback, and you're really kind of forget about your trap play. You know, it really kind of starts with that, I think, most commonly. You're missing that one kid, and it's common in high school football, and that part of your game just phases out slowly. I think it's something that my offensive staff and I have tried to make sure that we put an emphasis on. Is there a piece of this puzzle we're leaving out? We have to force ourselves to run trap. We have to run the buck sweep. You know, so it's common for these teams to leave a key component out. But you've got to make sure that you don't, because these key components are called key components for a reason. They keep people honest, and they keep people off of some of those other best play of yours. You know, you may not be great at it, and you may not run it 30 times a game, but don't leave a key component of your offense out. So if you're an offensive coordinator, and maybe you go back and study some film and look at yourself, is there a piece of my puzzle that I've been leaving out? Sometimes it can happen without you really noticing, or maybe you've only run it once a game. That could kind of still be considered leaving that out. Mistake number 4 is we don't stretch the field vertically. This is something I'm truly guilty of at times. However, I'm not nearly as guilty as I know a lot of my opponents are. They're not taking the time to really stretch the field vertically, and that can happen easily. Maybe you have a quarterback with not a very strong arm. Maybe you don't have a receiver that can really go get it. Maybe you're not getting the time. You can't protect it. Your offensive line isn't very good. There are plenty of reasons why you wouldn't stretch the field vertically. Sometimes you can feel like you're throwing a down away, but it is essential. The more I study offense, the more I hear from great coaches that you have to stretch the field vertically. One guy that I heard from, old Lou Johnston, from those Wing T videos that I watched, he really talks about stretching the field vertically at least once per quarter. You've got to go deep. You've got to find a way. I'm not going to tell you how you need to do it, but I'm going to tell you you need to stretch the field. Go deep. Find a way, even if you know you're not trying to complete it, stretch the field, because you are opening so much more up, and you're telling that defensive coordinator when he sees that ball go flying through the air, that does something to him. That affects his play calling. Just watching that ball in the air going deep, that 2 seconds where he holds his breath, you're affecting him as a play caller defensively. And I think that it is invaluable. Don't forget about it. I know that I have from time to time, but I'm always reminding myself, stretch the field. Number 5 thing the offensive coordinators forget to do, so a mistake that they make, is they don't have any tricks up their sleeve. Now, a trick can be something simple and common, like a reverse. Run a reverse, or a toss pass. If you run the toss, that's part of your system, have a toss pass. If you run the jet sweep, you need a jet sweep pass. Make sure you have these tricks up your sleeve. You're the offense. You're in control. Have some tricks. They need to just know that you can run it. At least run these things once every 3rd game. And I say that because if you're kind of, the common practice seems to be in America, you trade game film of the 2 previous games. These guys are going to see that toss pass or that trick play. They're going to see it on film. And you want them to see it on film. You want them barking at that cornerback all week. Stay back, stay back, stay back. You need that. The other thing to remember is that it doesn't have to be necessarily a quote-unquote trick play. There are a lot of other things that I think are tricks up your sleeve that you need to have that aren't considered trick plays. One of them is an unbalanced formation. Get some unbalanced formations. They play with the defensive interior. It's hard for a lot of high school kids to catch up to that unbalanced formation quick enough and hit them, catch them off balance. Have some sort of formation they haven't seen yet. That's a trick. Mess with the minds of these high school kids, and even mess with the defensive coordinator of the other team. Give them some things they're not prepared for. These are all tricks up your sleeve, and they give you an advantage in a very competitive football game. So there you go. There's 5 mistakes that offensive coordinators make. As I said, I know these mistakes because I've made them, and I make them often. But I think being aware of them is a step in the right direction. Be aware of mistakes that are common and fight against making them over and over and over. And have your staff ask them to hold you accountable. Guys, help us not to forget X, Y, and Z. These are mistakes that we make in the past. Help us to not make them again. We got to be reminding each other during the game, because let's face it, once the game gets going, emotions are going and you don't think very clearly. At least if you're anything like me, you don't think nearly as clearly in a game as you do when you're free from the game. You're free from that stress. As always, hey, log into the forums. Tell me some ideas or some common mistakes that you know offensive coordinators make as well. Let's continue this list. Anybody that gets onto the forums and makes a comment is entered in a drawing to win the new book, AFCA's Offensive Football Drills. In this book, it's just a whole collection of offensive football drills by different coaches. Coaches from different universities. They all shared, Illinois State, Miami, Southwest Texas State University, Washburn University, Air Force Academy. All these great drills. It's a collection of drills. It's a staple to have in your coaching library. So go ahead, log on to the forums. Every time you comment, your name will be entered in a drawing. We're going to do the next drawing on March 1st. Man, until next Tuesday, coach them up.